like to introduce now a man who has upheld the honor of wrestling in many places and many times with many people. At 234 pounds, from Memphis, Tennessee, ladies and gentlemen, the AWA World Champion, Kerry the King Lawler.
I just wanted to say and repeat what's been said so many times before tonight. It's all come down to this. There should only be one world heavyweight champion, and after this match is over, there will be only one world heavyweight champion. And I understand that a lot of people out here like Kerry Von Erich. I understand a lot of people that are watching like Kerry Von Erich. And I'm going to tell you this. I got all the respect in the world for Kerry Von Erich myself. But I'll also tell you this. I'm going to beat Kerry Von Erich right here.
There he is, the King, Jerry Lawler.
The following show is a Pod Avenue production. You are cordially invited to have dinner with the King. Pull up a chair and join WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler and Glenn Moore. Enjoy.
Welcome to Dinner with the King. I'm Glenn Moore, and before we get the King on the line for this week's episode, which is about SuperClash III, if you can read the title, about his match with Kerry Von Erich in Chicago. Did the King know about the finish before the match? What happened to Kerry's arm? The real story from the King himself on this week's episode. We get to that after the King's long story about his time in Cleveland for the Browns game and for his two-man show with JR. We also talk some WWE, why the ratings are a little bit low, and do the ratings matter if Vince is making a ton of money, which he is. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Then we get to SuperClash III. 30 years ago today on this recording on Thursday, December 13th, 30 years ago today, that match took place in Chicago. We saw the King get the win. Some little tidbits from behind the scenes about this match, and basically what took place after when it comes to territories and territories trying to match up with the WWF, which they were taking over at a quick pace. I want to let everybody know we talk about it on the show a little bit. I'll mention that to King is that we had a guest host, and the man didn't email me back. We were in contact for a little bit, and he had a show idea, and last few days trying to get down the time to record because the King only has a certain amount of time to record, and never got a response. So if you're listening, I'm not going to name the name of the person, but I'm sure you're listening because you're a fan of the podcast and you paid on Patreon to be a guest host. Email me back or DM me on Twitter, and we can get you back in cycle. But we'll have a new person for next week's show. And if you want to guest host an episode, you can go to patreon.com/dinnerwiththeking. You get all the episodes early as well. I do throw some pictures in there when I'm hanging out with King, or some some memorabilia from the King's Castle, some photos of what he has in storage, but also around his house, some things that maybe he's never seen before. And if you do subscribe now, you can view all the past posts. So all the pictures I posted, all the memorabilia stuff I posted in the past, if you subscribe now, you can view all those priors. And all our Patreon subscribers get the podcast a day early and also ad-free. So there's some rewards for supporting the show, and King and I really appreciate it. Like I said, if you want to co-host the show, patreon.com/dinnerwiththeking. And we can get you on the list to co-host an episode, which means you get to talk about anything you want with the King. King improved, actually. So that wraps me up, but I'm going to give my spiel. We do talk a little bit of chit-chat before we get to SuperClash III, so hope you enjoy that. But then we can talk about this match with Kerry Von Erich a little more in depth. I know we mentioned that in past episodes, but a little more behind the scenes, a little more if the King was, did he know that he was going to go over? what happened to Kerry's arm before the match, and a little bit more about that event in Chicago 30 years ago today. So let's get into it. Let's get the King on the line and get this baby rolling. Episode number 79 of Dinner with the King. I'm Glenn Moore, joined here by WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler. King, traveling to Cleveland, traveling up to Ohio for the weekend. Exciting weekend for you, King. But
I can't begin to tell you how many tweets and text messages I've gotten saying you and JR need to be at every Cleveland Browns game from now on, because it's like, we brought the luck.
I saw,
and I did feel that way a little bit. No, not really. I mean, yeah. it was a great fun weekend to be in Cleveland, to be a Browns fan. I mean, from the start to the finish, it was just a lot of fun.
One thing that surprised me over the weekend, seeing all the pictures and all the tweets from people, was JR sporting Browns gear like the whole weekend.
Yes.
I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Well, here's the thing. My very good, close personal friend, greatest guy in the world. I mean, when it comes to me and the Browns, the equipment manager of the Cleveland Browns is Brad Melland. And Brad always once a year takes care of me when once a year I'll get to go out to the Browns training facility, the headquarters actually, and he always fixes me up with one of the Cleveland Browns bags, duffel bags, full of swag. I mean, everything that the Browns players get, he hooks me up. And JR on, I think, Friday. Yeah, we went out on Friday morning, and then JR was out there on Friday afternoon doing a radio show in the Browns headquarters, and they hooked JR up with some swag. So, hey, you got to, I mean, when you're in Cleveland and you're going out to do to the ball game, you got to represent. But like you said, JR not only wore it at the ball game, he wore it on the show at our show at Hilarities. So he's and he said, I mean, JR's been kind of a lifelong, when it comes to the NFL, pro football, he's been a lifelong Steelers fan because his wife Jan was from Pittsburgh. And so she was a really a diehard Steelers fan. And so, he hung in there with the Steelers. But now because of the only thing that would supersede his affection for the Steelers was his love of the Oklahoma Sooners. And so since Baker Mayfield came from Oklahoma, now JR has adopted the Browns to be his favorite NFL team.
There you go.
There you go.
Could you imagine if, like, in a different world, the Steelers got Baker Mayfield?
Oh
my God.
Oh, that would be terrible.
Jeez, that would be
I'm going to tell you something. I've never been so impressed with anybody as I was this weekend with Baker Mayfield. We went out to, as I said, first of all, I took Lauren, of course, my fiance Lauren, her son Peyton, and I took my son Kevin. And so, it was like the four of us heading up to the Great White North. And sure enough, as soon as we landed in Cleveland and went from the airport over to the rental car center, it just started some of that lake effect snow. I mean, the biggest, prettiest snowflakes started falling in the middle of the afternoon. And I mean, we'd just come from Memphis, where it was a little cold, but not, nothing about it like snow or anything. So it was just great. It was a beautiful snowfall. It snowed all the rest of the day. It didn't mess up the roads or anything. It just got everything really pretty looking. And so that part was cool. Then Friday morning, we all went to the Browns headquarters. Brad was waiting on us there, took us in the back. And of course, you can imagine Peyton, who just turned 11 years old, and the Browns, I've made him like the Browns almost as much as I do. His real favorite team's actually the Cowboys, because that was who his dad's favorite team was. So he was brought up with the Cowboys, but he's switching over because he's hanging out with me so much that he's become a Browns fan. And now especially he's a huge Baker Mayfield fan. So we were like the only. It was my son Kevin didn't go. We dropped him off for somewhere, and he was kind of like doing some shopping, so he didn't go. So it was just me and Lauren and Peyton out to the Browns headquarters, and it was. I mean, I've been out there several times, but this was still just amazing for me. As soon as we got there, Brad Meadows took us into the back where, as I said, he's the head equipment manager, and his crew was working on helmets and jerseys and getting the guys. Some of the different players were walking in and getting new shoes and gloves and all that sort of stuff. And so Peyton's eyes were just like a kid at Christmas morning. Seeing all these players up close and everything, and then what's the player from Memphis?
Avery. Last name was Avery.
Yeah, he came over. Brad went and got him, and he said, here's a taste of Cleveland and Memphis. And then he came in, of course, knew me, and he said, man. He said, I was raised up on wrestling and on you and JR and watching wrestling every week all through my childhood and everything. So he signed some stuff for Peyton and just, everybody, nobody could have been nicer. It was just, it was an amazing experience. And then we got out, we started watching the practice, which lasted almost 2 hours long. And during that time, all of these people just started coming over to us. Now, everybody else is just, there's nobody else there except the Cleveland Browns. Their organization is all right there. And then me and Lauren and Peyton are like the only three guests that are, out there watching, right?
Yeah, not even the media is allowed to watch the full practice, only a little bit.
Nobody. There was nobody. We were the only people that were not with the organization that were standing there watching the practice. And all of them start coming over to us and talking. It was amazing. First, John Dorsey, the general manager, comes over, and just I'm just amazed at how much time and being nice and how much time they spent with us. I mean, he must have stood and talked with us 15 or 20 minutes, and he's of course talking about him as a kid growing up and the wrestlers that he watched, and he was amazed to find that some of the guys that he mentioned, I had actually got to wrestle, like Bobo Brazil. He said, man, I remember Bobo Brazil, when I was a kid. And I said, yeah, I actually got to wrestle Bobo Brazil one time. And he was just like shocked, so, and then after John Dorsey, he was really impressed with Peyton. He even grabbed Peyton one time and kind of rocked him around a little bit. And he said, hey, you got to shore up your base, kid. You got to keep that base there. He said, if I'd grabbed your dad like that, he would have just turned and flipped me right over his shoulder onto the ground. He said, but you got to shore your base up. And then, so anyway, then after that, then Greg Williams comes over, the coach, right? Head coach. And he comes over, stands there and starts talking to us. He starts talking about wrestling and stuff and how glad he was that we came and, some of the things that he was expecting from the team. And it was amazing that they were that nice and talking to us about all this, football and things. John Dorsey even told Peyton, he said, next year you come up here, I'm going to offer you a job. You're going to have to work here. You're going to have to come up here and do some work for us next year. So, they were just great. Then, of course, Baker Mayfield came over, signed some stuff for Peyton, just took some pictures with us. And then Callaway, what's his name? Callaway?
Antonio Callaway.
Antonio Callaway comes over, and he shakes hands with, this was at the end of the practice, and he takes off his receiving gloves and signs one of them and gives them to Peyton. So it was just, it was very nice. Everybody was so great. And then we were, all excited. We left there. We went down to Medina, Ohio. And you know what's in Medina, right?
Oh, the big Christmas not festival, but it's a big
Castle
attraction.
Noel.
Yeah,
yes,
Castle.
It is a big Christmas attraction. The whole city of Medina. It's an amazing place around Christmas time. But this place called Castle Noel is open year round. And it's the most amazing Christmas experience you will ever have. This guy, his name is Mark, and he looks like Santa Claus, and he spends every single waking hour and minute at Castle Noel, just improving it and making it more things to see. And I mean, there's so many Christmas movie props there. You know, one of my favorite things that I got to see was the RV, the old rusty RV from Christmas Vacation. That Cousin Eddie came up, and I mean, that actual RV is there. You can go up to see it, and it's got the hose sticking out, you know, where he was running it out into the sewer there. That's there. There's like 5,000 different props from different every kind of Christmas movie that you've ever seen. The huge sled that was in The Grinch, that huge sled that the Grinch and then we're riding on. It's just, oh my gosh, it's so much stuff to see there. And then he also goes every year. He goes up to New York and he buys some of the famous windows that are decorated in Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue and some of these major stores that they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on. He buys them at the end of the Christmas season, brings them back and puts them back in working order there in this Castle Noel. And it's just, there's so much to see. It's so really neat, especially this time of year. It was a really fun experience. So if you ever get a chance, it's in Medina, Ohio. It's about 20 minutes from Cleveland Airport, maybe 25 minutes from Cleveland Airport. And it's just a fun little drive down the interstate. And it's a great thing. If you love Christmas and Christmas movies and all that sort of stuff, great place to go see.
I mean, I've lived in Cleveland all my life, and I've never been there before.
I know, that's crazy. How is that? That's like, well, you know what's so funny? I mean, I can't tell you. You walk around Memphis and you'll see tons of people that have never been to Graceland, that live in Memphis their whole life and have never been to see Graceland, Elvis Presley's home. You know. Yeah. So, well, look, when you get back up there, especially before, are you going to be back before Christmas?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well,
then go down there. Take you one afternoon. It's really fun. It's really great.
All right. So Saturday was the big 2-man show at Hilarities. How'd that go?
Saturday, that went fantastic. It was great. The Hilarities was right across the street. We stayed at the Hyatt Regency at the arcade there in Cleveland, which as soon as I walked into it, I said, I've been here before. I know this place. And suddenly I realized this beautiful arcade right down the middle of this hotel, this old historic hotel, is where Travis Hafner and his wife Amy got married. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's why I remember this." So I was at their wedding, and believe it or not, there was another wedding going on while we were there on this trip. Somebody got married there Saturday night.
Well, that's where all the WWE stars stay when they go in Cleveland anyway, too. So you stay there a few times.
Well, you know what? Not so much. Mostly we stay at the Renaissance, which is right down in the tower where the mall is and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. That's mainly where they stay. You're right. I think we have stayed there a few times, but mainly down at the Renaissance. But anyway, it was a nice hotel. And then, man, literally right outside the door, right across the street, boom, there's Hilarities. So it was just great. The people there couldn't have been nicer. The owner, Nick, and everything. It really went well. JR was on the money. We both wore some Cleveland gear out there. I told everybody, I said, this is like when Mick Foley used to say the name of a town and get a cheap pop, right? I said, that's why this is our version of getting a cheap pop, us wearing Cleveland Browns jerseys and outfits out here to the show. But it was fun. Met a lot of great people, and I think everybody enjoyed the show.
Yeah, I was told it was a great crowd. A lot of people were there.
Sold out. Yeah. Sold out.
A few of my friends who went there said you and JR were great. So a lot of great feedback.
And you know what? I swear, when we got off the plane, and this was really weird. Nobody knew when or how that Lauren and I were coming in early. We came in on Thursday, right, for the show on Saturday. We get off the plane there in Cleveland. We're walking down through the hallway there, and all of a sudden here's this young guy, and he comes up and he's got several pictures of me. He said, "Mr. Lawler, can I get you to sign these pictures?"
What?
Yeah, on Thursday, right?
Oh, and my God.
I'm thinking, oh, this is a little bit stalkerish, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, "Are you going to the show?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going." And he said, "I called Hilarities." Now this is weird. This will tell you how much of a fan this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, "I called Hilarities and I asked him, what's the show going to be about?" And he said, "They told me they have no idea. They had no idea what the show is going to be about." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you why they said that." I said, "Because JR and I have no idea what the show is going to be about. The show just happens. We don't, it's not anything planned, or it's not any scripted show or anything like that. It just, it just happens. We talk about what the people want us to talk about, and it's almost mostly a 90-minute question and answer, and embellish all the answers, and so that's what happens." And he says, "Well, I just wanted to know because I was hoping it wasn't going to be like Jake the Snake Roberts." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh my gosh, I went to his show. It was awful."
Yeah.
And I said, what was wrong with it?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. He wouldn't answer any questions, and then it just barely got started. And then all of a sudden they came out and ushered him off the stage." So I said, "Well, trust me, it's not going to be like that."
Well,
so,
did you ask the guy, how do you know that you were at the airport that early?
No, I didn't even bother to ask him.
Well, I mean, that was a question I would ask him. Like, how did you know I was here? Like, that's kind of weird.
I know it. Thursday afternoon, there he was.
Yeah. I'm sure Lauren would want to know. Like, this is kind of
I thought maybe
creepy.
you told him. I thought maybe it might be one of your friends.
I put it on Twitter. I said,
You didn't even know when I was coming in, did you?
No, I didn't know you when you're going to be up there. No, not at all. That's creepy. First,
Creepy.
I think there's two places besides a personal home or a personal area for a celebrity. That's the airport, and at having dinner or eating food is two places where you don't bother. I think anybody, celebrity, non-celebrity. I don't get people waiting at the airport for wrestlers to land, especially like at WrestleMania or when a pay-per-view's happening, all people are coming in at the same time, just waiting or at the hotel too, waiting for pictures and interviews, or not interview, but autographs, especially when you're signing like 20 of them, and they're going on eBay, they're making $1 off your signature when you're not making anything. I don't get those people. Those people are scum of the earth to me.
Well, I'll tell you what. Then don't ever go to Japan, because and they're not they're that in a different way. They're true, really diehard wrestling fans. The first time I went to Japan, we were up in Sapporo, and it was the dead of winter. And it was during once a year in Sapporo, Japan, they had this thing called an ice festival where the army, their army and these soldiers and people come in, and throughout the entire city of Sapporo, they build these huge ice sculptors, right? On their sculptures, and they're all over the city. It was just amazing. And we had gotten in there. I'll never forget, Handsome Jimmy was on the trip with me. We had gotten into Sapporo, and I'm not exaggerating, there was 6 feet of snow on the ground. So much snow that people couldn't walk on the sidewalks. Honestly, they had tunneled under the snow, and people were walking on sidewalks like through the snow with snow over top of them. It's unbelievable. But let me tell you, all night long, I would get up and I would look out the hotel window, and there were hundreds of kids and fans that stood out in that cold and that snow, like all night long, just hoping to get a picture or just hoping to get an autograph from the wrestlers on that trip.
Jeez.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't ever look at those people. I really appreciate them. I think that's amazing that there are people that are that big of fans. I mean, to me, I
Be at the airport.
Yeah.
So people waiting, they know you're going to get off the flight, and they're waiting there with 20 pictures for you to sign.
Yes, they could be doing nobody really waits with 20 pictures. Nobody will ask you to sign 20 pictures.
I've seen those idiots.
Well, I haven't seen anybody ask me to sign 20 pictures. But yeah, they could be doing anything else in their life, but they're there to get an autograph or to get a picture with you. What?
Come on, Jerry.
I think that's flattering.
I really do. I think you're giving the PC answer, the goody-goody answer. I'm not sure how you really feel about that.
Well, now listen. I will do this. Because you've helped me open the fan mail. I mean, I just did a stack yesterday that took me almost 2 hours. But I do kind of look through the fan mail, and I do get upset when I can actually tell, that there's like one person and they try to change their handwriting or they try to change something different, but they will have mailed in like 10 pictures to get signed. And they'll write a letter saying, "Oh, this is for my kid," and everything, but don't personalize it. Just sign it, and then be sure and put Hall of Fame 07 on there, WWE Hall of Fame, and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden you go through, and the two letters later or 2 envelopes later, here's the same writing and the same post office box, but a different name. So I do get a little upset with those.
Yeah. Well, when I see that happening, and there's a lot of video of like, WWE current superstars, they're snubbing them or just walking past the people, or they say hi, but they don't stop and sign everybody's autograph or take everybody's picture. And, people are barking at them, saying, how can you walk past this kid, and it's disgusting. I mean, if you really want to get an autograph, go pay for it or wait for the show.
Well, I don't agree. I get upset if I ever see anybody refuse an autograph.
Well, I guess I'm Mr. Grinch then.
You must be Mr. Grinch. You know what? I'm wearing a Grinch T-shirt right now. Believe it or not, it's funny that you should say that. But anyway, no. If you turn down one person, if you ever are unkind or turn down an autograph or something for one person, that person will tell over a period of time 100 people that you're the biggest jerk in the world. And those 100 people will in turn tell other people, I heard about Lawler. You wouldn't just sign an autograph or something like, these are the people that, I promise you, and I know this sounds hokey or whatever, but I am so flattered still to this day that somebody wants a picture with me or wants an autograph. And I think I would never turn those people down, ever.
Well, good for you, King.
Good for me.
Good for you. Good for you. All right, wrapping up your Cleveland trip Sunday. You went to the game.
Oh, my gosh, Sunday. What a day. What a day.
Long day.
No, it wasn't. It seemed like it just went by so fast. But it was great. I mean, we got up. Actually, Kevin flew back on Sunday morning. I took him to the airport. And then I headed back, and we were ready to go out to the Cleveland Stadium. Got out there nice and early. We were down on the field. It was cold. Man, it was cold. Whew. But anyway, Brad had us down on the field while everybody warmed up and everybody was out there. And it was just, we had VIP passes. It said it right on there, VIP pass, all access. You could go anywhere. We could, didn't walk out on the field or anything, but we were literally standing right next to the field. As a matter of fact, one of the line judges came up to me and said, "If you're going to stand this close, you might as well work. Here, hold this thing." And he had me hold the down marker for a second, right? And it was just amazing. Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, came over, took pictures with us. Bernie Kosar was standing right out there talking with people. Baker Mayfield was warming up 2 feet in front of us. It was just awesome, but it was cold. So we were ready. He had us a suite as well. We were ready to get up in the suite, but then they came over and said, "Well, we got something special." As a matter of fact, Greg Williams told me this in practice at the practice on Friday morning. And I really didn't know a thing about it. He said, "I hear you guys are going to do something. I hear you're going to do something at the game." And I went, "What do you mean?" And he went, "Oh, I think I wasn't supposed to say anything about that. So act surprised." That's all he said. So I didn't know what he meant. And so then, sure enough, right before the game started, this young lady came up and said, "We want to, if we can, during the first break in the first quarter, we want to introduce you guys out in the end zone and have you help us throw out some T-shirts out to the dog pound." And I said, "Oh, awesome." So anyway, we waited. The game started, and we're waiting down there on the sidelines near the end zone. And the game's going and going. And so anyway, I'm expecting us to get ready to go out there, but I don't know. It was so exciting to watch the game. Peyton almost got ran over by Cam Newton. Literally, Cam Newton gets run out of bounds. We're right there on the sidelines, and Cam Newton, I never realized. I stood next to Baker Mayfield, and Baker's maybe an inch taller than me, something like that, 6'1" or so, but didn't seem like a big guy at all. I mean, just seemed like the same guy. Holy mackerel. Cam Newton came running right by us. This guy was like a giant. What is it? What are his stats? He's got to be like 6'6" or something, and must weigh 285 or something. This guy.
6'5", 245.
6'5", 245. I think that's like quarterback weight. I think he's more like a linebacker. And he was huge. He just seemed huge as he walked by us. Well, actually, he ran right by. They ran him out of bounds. He almost hit Peyton, which would have just squashed Peyton like a bug. But then Peyton, we were actually on TV. We came back and watched the game later, and there was, he ran right by Peyton, and then he kind of tapped him as he went back going back towards the field. So that was cool. Then all of a sudden the first quarter ends, and they said, "Oh, we didn't get a chance to do it. We're going to do it at the first break in the second quarter." Now, by this time, I'm like an icicle. I'm thinking, "Oh, please, let us get to our suite." So sure enough, first quarter, in the second quarter, first break, they introduced JR and I out on the field, and it was amazing. I mean, here's a 80,000 seat stadium and probably, 50 or so thousand people there. But it's like everybody knew us. Everybody. It was crazy. It was just like unbelievable. So then we threw out some shirts to everybody in the dog pound, and then we headed up to our suite and watched from there. Well, I was so glad to get in the suite. It was so nice and warm and all this kind of great food and people in there. Joe Thomas was in there. Joe Thomas came up to me, and first thing he said was, "Did you get my video I sent you?" And I said, "Yes, Joe, I did. I really appreciate it." And I told him, I said, "I thought that was a cameo." He said, No, it wasn't. He said he just called me up and asked me to sit it out for your birthday.
Who texted him?
Okay, you did, I guess, huh?
That was my birthday gift for you.
Well, I appreciate it. It was pretty cool. And Joe Thomas has lost a ton of weight. I think he said he's lost like 80 pounds.
He's still a big guy, but
he's still a big guy, but man, he really is fit right now. He looks great. And you can tell he went out and bought like brand new clothes for his new physique because he was really looking sharp. And he was telling everybody how he lost all the weight. And I was trying to watch the ball game, but I'm also trying to listen to how he told everybody he lost all the weight. He literally talked everybody was asking him about, the weight loss. And I mean, he talked about the food that he could eat and couldn't eat and didn't eat. And basically he said pretty much what everybody knows. You can't eat anything that tastes good. And so, cut out all the carbs. And it's just, gosh, yeah, you're right. We should both be listening, but gosh, it's so hard to do.
Yeah, no.
So hard to do.
Tell me about it.
But he did it. He looks great. So then we watched the game. And I'm going to tell you something, Baker Mayfield, man, he's the real deal. If you remember, Carolina came right down and scored. We kicked off to them. They came right down and scored on the opening drive. And I went, oh, no, this is terrible. This is not going to be a good day. Holy mackerel. Browns get the ball. First play. What did he throw? A 66-yard pass?
Yeah, for a touchdown.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, you gotta watch this guy. Some of the things that he does, some of the throws that he makes, it's amazing. I think he's the real deal, and he could lead the Cleveland fans out of the doldrums here. It's already. Can you imagine? I think you tweeted this out. It's December, and still, when you look at the NFL standings, the Cleveland Browns are in the hunt, still in the hunt in December to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
I'm not expecting it, but still just to be just to be talked about after going 0-16 last year.
Well, whenever they put the graphic up, they do now every week when the games are over, they put the graphic up, and the teams are the leaders in their division and the wild card teams, and they got in the hunt teams, which are teams that have a realistic chance of making the playoffs. And
yeah, they haven't been eliminated yet.
No, and they're still. I mean, they're the last team in the hunt, but they're still in the hunt. They're on the graphic, which we haven't been able to say that for the last 4 years.
Oh, right, without a doubt.
So,
but it was so much fun. Like I said, everybody at the game when the Browns they made that interception to seal the victory, and then went into the victory line up there for the last couple plays. It was really exciting. The fans there were beside themselves. They really want to be behind a winning team up there so bad.
So then the game was over. I heard you went down to the locker room. We're on the field. That's where everybody left.
Oh my gosh, that's the best part of the day. You said this to me a couple times, because when you stay down here, you see Peyton, and you said a couple times, said, "Man, this kid does not know how lucky he is," right?
Oh, exactly.
Easy now. Well, he really doesn't, because we got, and it's thanks to friends and fans and stuff like that. I mean, it's thanks to Brad being so nice to us and giving us the opportunity, because he is friends with me. You're right. But anyway, after the game was over, we went back to the locker room, hung out there until all the players had left. We got Baker Mayfield to come by and sign another football for Lauren and for Peyton again. What's his name? Coach? Is it Coach Wiley?
Yeah, with the big gut. Set Hut.
Easy. Yeah, that's what he writes on his autographs.
That's what he's known for now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, that's from the Browns Hard Knocks, when they made a compilation of him saying "Set Hut" in his gut. He goes up and down when he says "Set Hut." So
well, we sat and talked with him for at least 45 minutes. He just sat, and he kept telling Peyton, Peyton, he would see Peyton just looking at these players coming by, and he kept telling Peyton, "Play golf, kid, play golf." So anyway, matter of fact, when he signed an autograph for Peyton, he wrote "Play golf" on there. But I mean, it was just so much fun. Everybody was so great. Then we waited around while all the equipment managers are kind of the last people to leave, because they got to get everybody's stuff ready and to take back over to the headquarters. So when everybody was gone, we go back out onto the field, and I mean, here's First Energy Stadium, Cleveland Browns Stadium, completely lit up, but completely empty. Not a person in there. And me and Lauren and Peyton got to go out on the field with a football, and I'm throwing him passes, and he runs a 40-yard dash and is running all around this field, just like a kid in a candy store. It was amazing. And I'm just thinking, how many other kids in the world would ever get a chance to be by themselves out on an NFL football stadium field, and just get to run around and have the time of their life, trying to kick field goals and everything. It was just amazing. Fun time.
Well, I have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
Bob Wiley, the guy that you met, Set Hut, legend. He's a legend now.
Yes. What
kind of car does he drive?
Oh my gosh. We started talking about cars. He doesn't drive just a car. This guy's got, I don't know how many cars. I mean, and he's got, does he drive a Maserati?
Yeah, a white one too.
Yeah, a white Maserati. Trust me, he took his camera out and showed me pictures of all the different cars. He's got an unbelievable car collection. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cars.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you're right. It is unbelievable.
Well, look at you. You got the trivia question right.
Yeah, there you go. Maserati.
So
he doesn't really when you see him, he doesn't look like a Maserati type of guy, does he?
No, there's hope for me to fit one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
But fun weekend overall, huh, King?
Yeah, it was awesome. Really was.
Well, there you go.
And then, of course, we went out to Amherst, my old hometown, saw my house. Still looks the same as it did in 1964 when we lived up there. Went to Ziggy's there on the corner and got pizza. It was just a win. And the Ben Franklin's, of course. Ben Franklin's still open there. The Five and Dime store is still open right on Main Street in Amherst. So it was a fun week.
You know, we should do a podcast from your old childhood home in Memphis.
My old childhood home in Memphis?
Yeah.
Over on Vernon Avenue?
Yeah. We took you by there a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah. The house across the street just burned down recently.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's not good.
It's not good.
No.
The neighborhood has changed a little bit over there in East Memphis.
All right, King. Well, you want to get to the meat portion of our podcast?
Yeah, let's just continue small talk.
Well, the meat portion of our
What is the meat portion?
Well, 30 years ago today, King.
Well, wait a minute. What, before we talk about 30 years ago, let's talk about a couple of days ago. What happened on Raw and SmackDown? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, you got Raw and SmackDown, the go-home shows for TLC, which is on Sunday, the last pay-per-view of 2018. Can't believe it's almost 2019 already.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Jeez. So you got that. You got Raw and SmackDown. You know, they got some good matches going to take place at TLC.
Every time I hear TLC, I just think of my match that I had with The Miz for the WWE title.
You had it in your hands, King.
A tables, ladders, and chairs match for the WWE title, me and The Miz. And I had the title right in my hand. And then I felt the tug. I felt the tug on my leg, and I looked down, and there's Michael Cole, who should have been over at the announce table. He's in the ring with like a suit and tie on, and he's tugging on my ankle. And I still, to this day, don't know the logic behind what was he doing? Was he because he was a Miz fan? Or was it because he didn't want to lose me as a broadcast partner? Or what was it? Why was he in there?
No, I know he was. You know, this is back when Michael Cole was, playing as the bad guy announcer. So he was a big Miz fan when Miz would come out. So I think it was more of not letting Miz lose the title. But I also thought it was because, hey, you're a broadcaster now, King. You shouldn't be WWE champion.
Yeah, it was probably a combination of both of those. That was, that question came up during one of our question and answer things. A question sort of about that match. Well, it really wasn't, but the answer was about that match. One of the questions was somebody asked me who was like the stiffest person that you ever worked with, and who was a person that like hit you the hardest, maybe not even meaning to, but was just really snug and stiff, and somebody that you just didn't enjoy working with. And then, of course, I had to say, first off, I'd have to say, Dolph Ziggler. He killed me with his elbow drops. Those are killers, and they really were, they were really stiff. But some guys in the past that you used to work with, and JR even mentioned the name that I was going to say, was like Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen. Oh my gosh. One time I booked a match, me and Austin Idol against Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen. Oh my gosh, they beat us up so bad after the match. We were sitting in the locker room, and Austin Idol looked at me and said, "King, if you ever book that match again, I'll quit the business." I won't just quit the territory. I'll quit the business. so I didn't book us back against those guys. But man, those guys were a handful. But I still say the hardest I've ever been hit, and this was like out of the blue, was during the Miz match for the title, the tables, ladders, and chairs match. I had just done something to the Miz, maybe rammed him into the table or something like that, right down near the edge of the ring. And I turned around, and I don't know if that wasn't expecting it or whatever, but Alex Riley hit me with a freaking clothesline. He jumped up on the apron. I was inside the ring, and he was on the outside on the apron. And when I turned around, he nailed me with a clothesline, and I thought I was dead. I mean, it was like knocked me completely out for a few seconds. I don't know if I was so close to the edge of the ring, which is the hardest part, and I might have hit my head on the back of the ring when I went down. But I still say to this day, that's the hardest I've ever been hit by anybody. Alex Riley in that Miz match.
Well,
it was something.
Alex Riley, I think, is no longer wrestling, so that tells you something.
I didn't have anything to do with that, Alex.
But no, we talked about that match a lot. I think episode, one of the early episodes was all about that match. between you and Miz. So you guys go back and listen to that episode because we go in depth about that match. Well, you want to talk about 30 years?
Are you talking to me or everybody else?
Everybody else.
You need to go back and listen to that. Right?
You do too, King.
Okay.
30 years ago. You want to get into that?
Okay. Oh, so we already talked about Raw?
Yeah, well,
you know what? The only thing I didn't know if some people are talking about the fact that the ratings have hit all-time lows.
It's not looking good for Raw.
Well, SmackDown's ratings aren't really any better, but anyway, yeah, Raw has hit some lows over the last few weeks, and it's like it's so funny because I guess I'm watching the show and. It just reminds me of when we used to do Raw. They would always, Vince especially liked it when you would, check the newspaper, watch the news, and say stuff that was topical. Talk about things that had just happened, and it just made the show more. It made the people realize that, hey, this is going on right now. They're talking about things that just are really happening right now, and apparently they're like incorporating the fact that that Raw's having bad ratings into the storyline of the show. Is that true?
Yeah,
they're kind of blame. Some guys are blaming it on Baron Corbin, right?
Because he's the acting, GM, and
so some guys have been saying, "Yeah, the bad ratings are your fault."
I
think in the past you would never acknowledge the fact that the ratings. That's something you'd always lie about. Oh, ratings are great. Ratings are great. Now they're coming out and actually talking about it in the show, which is cool because, it almost makes people think, oh, they're just saying that. This is part of the storyline. The ratings aren't really bad. This is part of the storyline, which is actually, they may be so much smarter than we think, they are by doing that.
I mean... The ratings are bad. That's the truth. It's not. They're setting all-time lows for viewership. I think 4 times in the past 6 months they've set their all-time low mark when it comes to overall viewers for Raw, which is the staple show of WWE. It's nice to incorporate it in the storyline, but when it's actually happening, that can't be good. But then again, there's a Forbes article that says that WWE is going to have their most profitable fiscal year when it comes to making money. They're making money hand over fist, bigger than Attitude Era, and they're going to make even more money next year. So okay, when you're making money, why change anything?
You can't you can't knock success. That's the bottom line with any business. And they became a publicly traded business, so to speak, back in the day, and now the bottom line is what it's all about. So even though you don't want to hear anything about it, you want as many people as you can to be watching the show. You want the ratings to be great, but like you said, how do you knock it? How do you knock anything that they're doing when the money is going to be so good for them? Yeah. You know what? And I just think that it's not really anything, I think mainly the writers, creative staff or whatever get the blame. But when I sit back, and I've been doing this for 47 years, when I sit back and I look, it's just timing. I'll go back a long way here, but where the company is built, it always has to have a superstar and a pecking order. And you got to have that one superstar that basically carries the company. And that started back with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then went from Stone Cold to The Rock, and then went from The Rock to John Cena. And then, from that point, they tried, I think, to pass the torch on to Roman Reigns, and now Roman Reigns is out. And I just think that right now they're searching for that one superstar, waiting for them to come along. I don't know if I see anybody on the horizon that is another Stone Cold or The Rock or John Cena right now.
I agree.
And I think there's just so much you can do with the Raw, and I don't think those, I don't know if those kind of people can be created, so to speak. I think they're just once in a lifetime talents that come along, and trust me, every guy that puts on a pair of tights in the WWE and makes it to that level, every guy is thinking in their mind, man, if they'd just give me the ball and let me run with it, I would draw the crowds that John Cena drew, and I would draw the ratings that The Rock did and everything. But in reality, that's just not the case. There's just something about some certain person like a Stone Cold or a Rock or John Cena that not everybody has. And, I just think that right at the moment, they're searching for that person that they can hang their hat on again.
Yeah. And it's hurting them because, like I said, the ratings aren't doing very good, but they're making money. Networks want them, paid what? $1 billion SmackDown got for his Fox. I mean, Vince is making money hand over fist. The stock is up, and the stock has basically doubled in the past year. Money-wise, which is that's what matters the most, is making money.
Yeah.
They're doing very well at that. So, and there's no competition either. So why they have to change stuff? There's no alternative to WWE on their level for people that to spend their money on. It's all WWE. So why should WWE change anything if they're making money? Yeah, okay, the programming not getting the ratings, but they are getting billions of YouTube views. Merch is selling like hotcakes. I mean, they're making a lot of money. So why change stuff?
Yep, you're right. So anyway, that's our talk. That's our venting about Raw and SmackDown, WWE right now. Hey, speaking of wrestling shows, I just had a meeting today with our people, the general manager and the program director at WLMT CW30, where my classic Memphis wrestling show airs every Saturday morning. And we did 13 shows, I think, or 12 shows, and we've been in reruns ever since maybe back in July or something like that. And I thought that, the last thing they had said was, we'll go to the end of the year and see what happens. And so I was just thinking that was going to be it after the end of the year. But they called me in today, and we had a nice, great meeting, and they want to renew the show and really put a little more emphasis on it, and maybe even to talk about having another show. So we're really looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to, I had a meeting this past week with the brain trust of Fitzgerald's Casino down in Tunica. And it looks like we're going to do some stuff with the Fitz down there involving wrestling and TV shows and all sorts of things. So we got a lot of stuff that's going to be newsworthy happening here in Memphis with our local wrestling and everything in the very near future that I'm excited about.
Well, that's good because, a few episodes ago we did why Memphis wrestling is, on life support. So it's good to hear this news.
Yes, it is.
So, all right, King. Let's go to the
here we go.
Let's go to the topic that I wanted to talk about, because it's been 30 years since this show took place in Chicago. 30 years ago, King.
What are you talking about?
SuperClash III.
Vern Gagne presents SuperClash III. From the University of Illinois Chicago Pavilion in Chicago, Illinois, these matches are sanctioned by the AWA, the WCCW, the CWA, and the CWF. And now let's go to ringside, and your host for this evening, Larry Nelson.
SuperClash 3 was 30 years ago?
30 years ago today, as we sit here and record on December 13th. 30 years ago, we have Jerry Lawler, AWA World Heavyweight Champion, going against Kerry Von Erich. It was a great match in Chicago between you and Kerry Von Erich. A lot of people talk about this pay-per-view. They criticize it, the whole show, but when it comes to positive reviews, the match between you and Kerry, definitely gets a lot of praise. Also on this the show, there's a lot of youngsters. You have a 23-year-old Mick Foley wrestling on this card. You have a young Jeff Jarrett. I think it was 21 years old. Jeff Jarrett wrestling on this card. Medusa was on this card wrestling. So a lot of youngins. Wrestling.
Yeah, this was, that whole show was put together by pretty much all the promoters that felt, threatened by the fact that Vince McMahon and WWE had sort of raided I think we talked about this last week. They felt like Vince was raiding their territories and taking all their talent, when in reality, it was the talent that was saying, hey, I want to go and work for the company that has worldwide TV. I don't want to just be stuck here in a local yokel situation where I'm only seen on TV shows in a few cities when he's got nationwide TV. So that's what happened. That's why the main talent left. And poor Vern Gagne, he lost almost all of his top guys to Vince. And so, like I said, we lasted the longest territory-wise was because, I was part owner and I was the guy on top, and I didn't want to go anywhere. So, that's why we were able to. The people in Memphis and our territory didn't feel like they had ever lost their top star. So, but the other territories, these promoters all got together and they thought that, that putting on this big pay-per-view was the way to, the way to combat Vince and his worldwide domination at the time. And really, when you look at do you have the card there in front of you?
I do.
There was some decent talent, just from top to bottom. What was the card? What were the matches?
Well, you have the Guerreros. You got Chavo, Mondo, Hector against Cactus Jack and the Rock and Roll RPMs.
Rock and Roll RPMs. A couple guys territory. That was a tag team from our territory.
Yeah, Mike Davis and Tommy Lane. You have Eric Embry and Jeff Jarrett, Handsome Jimmy, Wayne Bloom, Iceman King Parsons versus Brickhouse Brown. You had the Top Guns, which was Ricky Rice and Derek Dukes with Wendy Richter. And you had Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka with Medusa. And DDP was also on this show. Greg Gagne and Ron Garvin. You had Sergeant Slaughter. You had the Samoan SWAT team with Samu and Fatu. You had Wahoo McDaniel, Manny Fernandez. And, of course, you had your match, Rock and Roll Express versus the Stud Stable. This card it was a decent card.
It was a lot of top talent. Where it was was Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy?
Yeah, Michael Hayes. They faced a Samoan SWAT team. Michael Hayes and Steve Cox.
Yeah, there are a lot of good names on there.
Oh my God!
What?
Oh, one of my favorites of all time.
Who?
Well, he's not a wrestler, but he was one of my favorite announcers, Lee Marshall.
Oh my gosh, Lee Marshall! Oh, that voice said Lee Marshall.
They're great. He was a frosted Tony the Tiger.
Yes,
Frosted Flakes.
It's Lee Marshall on his way over here. Lee, we've only got a very short amount of time. Again, in the title match, we said it before, we both favor the King.
Absolutely. This is a match where two men are going to walk into the ring, both of them with belts. One man is going to walk out with two belts. I'm so delighted that there are so many Kerry Von Erich fans here. I know that there are a lot of fans of Jerry the King Lawler. You and I both went on record, Larry. We happen to both favor the AWA heavyweight champion of the world, Jerry the King Lawler. Good luck to both guys.
And he was in WCW back when I was a teenager, so he was he always did the 1-800 number, the 1-900 number. He would always do that for WCW, but he was the play-by-play guy for the show and did some ringside interviews. But Lee Marshall is one of my all-time favorite announcers.
Yeah, he did a good job on our match as well. I've watched it a bunch of times and listened to Lee doing the commentary on it. And it was like I said, a lot of names. They just didn't have that national exposure to plug this thing.
Yeah.
Everybody was plugging it on their own little syndicated TV shows, And you didn't have that. You didn't have like what the WWE had or what WCW had at the time. You didn't have that national TV to plug this pay-per-view. So it did as good as it could. And I like I said, I didn't really get to watch any of the other matches. I just knew there were some good names on the show. But then when it got around to our match, I'm glad everybody. I've not heard any real negative comments over the years about it. Everybody seemed to like it. I just is that without a doubt. I think we said this before. The bloodiest match. I mean, I've been in a lot of bloody matches in my career. Tommy Rich would bleed like a stuck hog, but just a bunch of guys, a lot of bloody matches. But that match with Kerry Von Erich was the bloodiest match I've ever been in.
Well, let's talk about that match. Now, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this match when Kerry it was busted open. His arm was busted open early on, if that was supposed to happen and wasn't supposed to happen. There's been rumors that he cut himself on accident in the ring before the match, right before, where he took his jacket off, or it was when in the locker room and you guys had the plan around that. What's the case? What was up with Kerry's arm, first few minutes of the match?
Well, that little incident happened in the locker room right before the match started. They called us together, Vern Gagne and me, and I think Gary Marshall and was it Gary Marshall? What's his name? The announcer that we talked about?
Lee Marshall.
Lee Marshall. Gary Marshall was what's his name? The movie guy, right? But anyway, they called us all together, and then. I can't remember who the guy had or who Kerry had that was representing, the WCW, or not WCW, but it was World Class who was representing them. But anyway, they called the five of us together there, and we're all standing looking at each other. And to be quite honest, I mean, the match, it was like basically in the intermission right before the main event. And we're just standing there. And nobody had said anything to us about what was going to happen in the match. And honestly, I felt from the get-go that, they were going to have Kerry go over in this thing. And I really feel like from the get-go that Kerry believed that he was going to go over in this match, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I noticed Kerry was like really nervous, and he was just kind of pacing around, or just not necessarily pacing. He's standing there, but he's shifting his weight back and forth from his left foot to his right foot, and he's scratching his arms and everything, like he's itching all over. And so they're telling what they want us to do, and so then all of a sudden, Kerry he scratched his right shoulder with his left hand, and then all of a sudden he reaches up to scratch under his arm with his right hand, and I guess he forgot that he had this blade taped to his index finger, right?
Yeah. And
so he goes to scratch under his arm, and man, he just ripped his arm open, and his muscles. I mean, Kerry had huge biceps. And when that skin ripped open on the bottom of his arm, it just pulled apart, like it was just like it popped. And I mean, blood started shooting out of there like crazy. And everybody's going, "Oh my God, what? Oh, look out, what did you do?" And he's like, oh my gosh. And so they tried to put some tape, and they tried to wipe it off and tried to put some tape on it. And Kerry was wearing a big robe. And so they said, "All right, just, ring the bell quick." Right. So we went out to the ring, and his arm was bleeding under his robe already. And as soon as they made the introductions, if you watch it back, I rushed across the ring even before he could get his robe off and attacked that arm. And I grabbed him by the wrist, and I started banging his arm on the turnbuckle, on the top turnbuckle.
Right.
And so that was, of course, then when we got his robe off, his arm was already bleeding. And of course, Lee Marshall said, "Oh my gosh, look at this! The king has opened up Terry's arm. Look at or Kerry's arm. Look at this. I mean, Kerry's arm is bleeding like crazy from that top turnbuckle." And then, of course, in reality, he had just kind of mistakenly sliced it right before we went out for the match.
Jeez. Well, so
he was bleeding like crazy from his arm, but that was nothing compared to what he did to his head a little bit later on.
Oh my God. Well, my question for you, obviously, Kerry had some problems with addiction and whatnot. I mean, was there any worries on your end? I mean, working with someone that possibly could be drugged up or taking drugs in the ring, putting your life in danger. Was there any kind of worries on your part or no?
You know what? And I look back on it, and I do remember this part. Certain things I remember distinctly. I do remember running over and grabbing his arm, pounding it on that top turnbuckle. But then I remember later on in the match when Kerry had me down on my back, and he has the claw on me, right? But he's bleeding so profusely that he couldn't see anything. It blows, covering both his eyes, and the referee's trying to check on him to see if he can continue. But he has me in the finishing hold. He has me in the claw, right? And he's right above me, and the blood was just dripping off of his head and off of his chin, going right down into my mouth.
Oh.
But I swear to you, this was like one of the, I remember that distinctly, but it was like, I don't know, what year was this? 30 years ago?
Yeah, 88.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't even know if AIDS or whatever had even been invented yet then, or it was even talked about. So that nothing like that ever even crossed my mind. I was just caught up in the match and all that sort of thing. I didn't even think about any health hazards or anything like that with Kerry.
Well, I'm watching the match right now as you talk, and like when Kerry gets in the ring, he immediately opens up his robe and looks, down the sleeve of his robe to check on his
He was
arm.
Embarrassed. I promise you, poor Kerry was so embarrassed that happened.
So he's taking off his belt. He's, he has, he's in the ring. You're looking over. You take off your belt, and then his robe is still on. He's checking his arm still. He's still checking his arm. Still checking his arm. The referee's holding the belts up. You are in your corner ready to go. They do a crowd shot. He still has his robe on. He still has his robe on. He's just pacing in the ring. You're looking down. I think now he takes his robe off, and there's no blood. There's not a lot of I don't see any blood going down his arm or anything. His robe is completely off. You do some, and then here you attack him.
There you go.
So there you go. Man, he's jacked.
Yeah.
But here you go. So here's this match. Like you said, there was a bloody match, and you said later on.
Wait a minute, you're not going to do a Lee Marshall on his arm. You're not
No.
Okay, good.
No. Well, we can fast forward to the.
But I mean, that was a match in which, Vern especially didn't want his champion, who was me, to lose, and the WCW guys didn't want their champion, who was Kerry, to lose. And so, they came up with something that I won, but he didn't lose. I mean, he looked like he had the match won, and he had me in his finishing hold. But then the referee took the heat basically by stopping the match and declaring me the winner, saying that Kerry couldn't continue because he was cut open too bad.
Right.
And so it was to me a good way to change the titles without hurting anyone. All the I keep saying WCW, I stand corrected again, but all the world class fans, in watching the match, they could easily go around and say, Kerry got screwed. He really won that match, and should have won that match and that sort of thing. So it was good.
And both of you didn't know who was going to win until right before the match even started, right?
Probably less than 5 minutes before.
Wow. Well, and a lot of people are, talking about the finish, if that was because of too much blood, if that was planned to be that way, but that the ending went all to plan, correct?
Yeah, it did. Yep.
Well, you're kind of playing the heel during this match, but you went on the mic after the match and said, "Oh, the ref made the right decision to stop it." Kind of playing. That's not very a heelish thing to do, though.
Well, I don't know if I was actually, for the people back in Memphis, I wasn't a heel. I was just a heel when I went outside of Memphis. So I was trying to play the more sort of the Daniel Bryan type heel, not just blatantly outright healing, but just kind of being a logical type heel that would for the world class fans, I was a heel, but for the Memphis fans, I wasn't being,
Yeah. But Kerry was great. You and Kerry had some matches, especially later on for the title, which I think you went over again. But this is kind of with the AWA, trying to compete with WWF. This is kind of like a moment in time to where WWF was starting to take over, and this is kind of one of the last shows that we had promotions going at each other. In the ring.
It was almost like remember the Alamo.
Yeah,
it was.
The last stand.
I felt like we were the Alamo. That one last stand. That, and then afterwards, we took that final bow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's just what happened. And hey, who's to say if? I always look at almost everything in life that all of the different things that happened to you have gotten you where you are today, good or bad. And I mean, just you can look back on some things that you say, oh, this was terrible, this was bad. But if that hadn't happened, you probably would not be where you are today. You wouldn't be the person you are today, so.
Yeah. Before this event, you were given an award. Do you remember that?
I was.
Do you remember that award?
No.
You were the Inspirational Wrestler of the Year.
Oh, from Bill Apter?
Bill Apter gave you the award before the show. They actually showed it during the SuperClash III broadcast. Young Bill Apter, 30 years ago for Bill Apter, and he gave you the award, and you were like, well, next year you give me Wrestler of the Year award.
Yeah.
You were the Inspirational Wrestler of the Year.
Wow.
Yeah, where's that plaque at, King?
30 years ago. That's so amazing.
30 years ago. This
I probably do have that plaque somewhere.
Yeah.
It may be down at the club on Beale Street.
Oh, that'd be a good spot for it.
Yeah. We got some big things happening down there coming up. We got the Liberty Bowl coming in, and Mizzou is coming. And these are the craziest bunch of football fans, and they're going to be coming down. And I'm going to be down there with them the night before the Liberty Bowl, which I think is January when is the Liberty Bowl? 2nd?
Let me see.
Or is it January 1st?
The Liberty Bowl is the 31st.
31st. There you
at
go.
2:45 p.m. Missouri versus Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so I'll be down there with the Missouri people at my bar on Beale Street, and they have rented out the entire place. And boy, I'm gonna tell you something. Those people party.
Well, I'm gonna be down. I'm gonna be. Last year I was there for New Year's. I think I'm gonna do that again.
Oh, really?
Give me a bottle of champagne.
Yes, you sure were there for New Year's.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was. Final thing, King. Final thing. We'll wrap it up really quick. Larry the Axe Henning passed away recently. Obviously, father of Kurt Hennig.
Yep.
But the one thing that we talked about during the show was when you and Kurt Hennig were wrestling, you had a 900 number voting system to see who the special guest referee was going to be, either Jackie Fargo or Larry Hennig.
Yeah, this was this is 1988 for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship, and Kurt Hennig. We kind of pulled a fast one in the fact that we told the fans, nobody was even thinking about a special referee or anything. The match was booked, and this was going to be May the 8th, and so a couple months before that, all of a sudden Kurt Hennig comes up with the idea. He said, "Well, everybody's always against me here in Memphis, and I never can get a fair shake. So I've asked the AWA to appoint a special referee for this match, and it's going to be my dad, Larry the Axe Hennig." And of course, we all went, "What? What are your dad? Are you kidding me?" And so anyway, then I came back and I said, "Well, I'm going to petition the AWA to appoint a special referee as well, and it's going to be a man that's like my father. It's going to be Jackie Fargo. That's who I want as a referee." And so anyway, this was the days, and this was the days when I guess the 900 numbers were just coming into effect, right?
Yeah.
So Jerry Jarrett set up this 900 number where the fans, I think for 50 cents a call, could call in and vote who they wanted the special referee to be, Jackie Fargo or Larry the Axe Henning. And so, of course, Jackie Fargo, won out. And you said you read somewhere that we made $10,000 on that phone line. That's not
there's the
definitely
rumor
not true. Not true.
that you and Jarrett made $5,000 each for the 900 voting. Is that true?
Well,
Come
I'll
on,
tell you
kid.
this. If that were true, we'd have stopped promoting wrestling and started promoting 900 numbers.
That means you had to have 20,000 calls to do that, but I don't.
We might have had 20,000. That was in the early infancy of those 900 numbers. That was when little kids would get on the phone and not hear the part that this call will cost you 50 cents. And kids would start calling on their parents' phone line and over and over and over and over and, just continuing to vote. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the month, their parents get hit with this huge phone bill. So we didn't do that anymore after that.
So no $5,000 for you, King.
I don't think so.
Well, and the rest is history. Yep. All right, King. Final thought. Where you're off basically now until the new year, right?
Yeah, I try to take the rest of the month off. We're still, Lauren's still decorating and a lot of stuff to do around the house. We may, I think, honestly, next week, we may shoot up to New York for a couple days and it's on her bucket list. So, anything on a bucket list when you're 30 years old, that's a big deal, right? So she wants to go see the Rockettes.
Mm-hmm.
And see the Christmas tree at the Rockefeller Center and all that kind of stuff. So we may run up to New York for a couple of days and right before Christmas and do that.
That sounds good. All right, we'll be back next week with another episode. Our fan guest we had a fan guest show for this week, and the guy never responded to their email a couple of days before. I gave him an extra day. And never responded.
You make it sound like we got one fan out there.
Well, no, we have a long list of people who wants to be the guest host for the show. But this man,
once again, you know what I'm having for Christmas dinner with the King, don't you?
What? It's a barbecue.
No, Omaha steaks.
Omaha steaks.
Yes, sir. They are awesome.
OmahaSteaks.com, and you put in King, and you get 74% off. The family package.
It's like an amazing offer. I had that same offer arrive at my house the other day, and I just kept looking at steaks and steaks and steaks, and I said, I got all this for like $50. Unbelievable.
Great. You put the tweet out last.
I mean, you go to like a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or something like that, and one of those steaks in there would cost you more than $50, and it wouldn't be as good as the Omaha steak. I promise you.
That's great. So OmahaSteaks.com, put in King in the search bar, and you'll go right to the deal. And if you do it, send us a screenshot of your receipt. Let us know that you did it.
You said doo-doo.
Doo-doo. What did I say doo-doo, did I?
You said if you do it.
If you do it. If you do, take a picture of it.
Yeah.
All right, King.
Hang on a second. Just talk for just 1 second while I grab this. I was speaking of that. I want to play this little thing. Just talk, say anything for 1 second.
Well, make sure to go to KingJerryLawler.com for his store. I don't think the Christmas mystery boxes are still for sale. There might be, but if you want to grab one before the holidays,
okay, I'm
Christmas.
Back. What'd you say?
Are you still doing Christmas mystery boxes even though we're 12 days out?
I just did a mystery box yesterday.
Well, if you want to get yours in.
I promise people don't realize I will spend all day putting together a mystery box for somebody for $150. Good grief.
So
am I crazy?
You're crazy. But people should order them. Make sure to order yours before the holidays.
Listen. All right. So here, speaking of, you said doo-doo. You ever seen what's the little emoji that looks like a poop?
Yeah, the poop emoji, yeah.
But really, somebody said that originally that was supposed to be chocolate ice cream. Is that true?
Right.
That's what I heard.
They could have put a cone on it if they were going to do that.
So look, we're out, and Peyton and I are out shopping for his mom a birthday present for her 30th birthday, right? Which was November 30th. And so all of a sudden he comes up and he says, I found her present.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, what is it? And he pulls it from behind, and it's this little it's this little snuggly looking little poop emoji, right? It's like a little plush toy, and he's got a little I don't know, piece of holly berries in his hand. But you press his foot, and he sings a song. So I'm going to press it, and you got to listen carefully to this, okay? And realize that this is a little poop emoji.
You can't touch this. You can't touch this. My, something stinky underneath the tree. And oh no, you just stepped in me. Festive in my Santa cap, this poop emoji brings the rap. Santa's reindeer went number 2. He made the cutest little poo, and I'm known as such. Merry Christmas. You can't touch this. No touching. You can't touch this. I'm strictly hands off. Poopy time.
There you go, poopy time.
Yeah, I saw it last time I was in Memphis.
That was Lauren's birthday gift.
I bet she loved that.
Oh yeah.
That should play every single time someone drops a deuce at the King's Castle.
Easy now. What are you talking about? You see, you went straight downhill with it. Come on.
Greetings, wrestling fans. This is Dave Dynasty, host of the Dave Dynasty Show, the podcast that every week brings you nearly 2 hours of pro wrestling goodness from the Midwest. We feature interviews with the legends of the past, stars of today, and the prospects of tomorrow. We have segments that feature classic wrestling audio, whole episodes devoted to the history of Midwest pro wrestling, and much, much more. Do not miss an episode of the Dave Dynasty Show. We are available on all podcast platforms, or you can access past episodes and all of our social media links by visiting davedynasty.com. Be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
All right, King, final word.
Poopy time.
Oh my God. With that, we'll talk to everybody next week here on Dinner with the King. Yeah.
I knew that was coming. Yeah.
The preceding show is a Pod Avenue production.